Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar. We've got a really great jazz and just overall smart player from New York City, Luca Benedetti, and he is Jim Campilongo, I think, referred me to Luke, and he goes, Craig, this is the hot jazz player in New York. When Jim Campilongo says that, my eyes open, and your ears should open too, so pay attention. I'll tell you background about Luca. He's a guitarist, composer, and producer. He's performed in a wide variety of roots, jazz, country, and Americana-inspired projects since moving to New York in 1996. And that's all true, man. I looked at like 3 or 4 of his YouTube videos. It was like a different category, each one excellent in every one. His most recent collaborations include performances, production, and recordings with Jim Campilongo, Martha Redbone, the Honeyfingers, or just Honeyfingers, I should say, the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout, Erik Deutsch, Jon Cowherd, Zephaniah and the 18-Wheelers, Jason Loughlin and the String Gliders, Kelli Scarr and North of Amarillo, the National Reserve, and Margo Valiante. As an original member of the Honeyfingers, Luca co-produced and performed on the Jim Campilongo and Honeyfingers album Last Night, This Morning, which was hailed by Vintage Guitar as a brilliant record with magic and artistry, and by Guitar Player magazine as a hoedown throwdown that looks to be one of the top guitar records of the year. Along with Jim Campilongo, Luca also co-produced the highly praised release This Highway by rising country star Zephaniah. Luca holds a bachelor's degree from Berklee and a master's degree from City College of New York. While attending City College, Luca studied with jazz legend Ron Carter, who quickly became a mentor and friend. On several occasions, Mr. Carter invited Luca to perform, including a memorable trio performance for the ASCAP Hall of Fame ceremony honoring Milt Hinton and Artie Shaw. Luca's session work has been featured on advertisements with McDonald's, Subway, Rolex, Arby's, the cotton industry, Axe, AT&T, and many more. And that's Axe, A-X-E, not Axe like go axe a question. He also performed on several off-Broadway musicals and scored the music, this is really cool, for the Cuban Cowboys-inspired soundtrack for KPI TV's Lucha Libre, Life Behind the Mask. Luca's an active music instructor, and he teaches privately as well as at the City College of New York, Long Island Conservatory, Larchmont Music Academy, man, that's beautiful up there, and the Garden House School. He was originally born in Rome, Italy, and due to his dad's work, he spent the majority of his youth living abroad, which exposed him to numerous musical cultures across Africa, South America, Europe, and Asia. Since 2014, Luca's been living bi-coastally between Brooklyn, New York, and Vancouver, British Columbia. Man, thank you so much for coming on the show, Luca. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Did I butcher that up, or was that did I do that all right?
That was pretty good.
That's good. Pretty good. That's about as good as I get, Luca, to be honest with you. Hey man, you moved to New York in '96. I was curious what prompted that move and what were you doing musically right before you moved?
I was in Boston attending Berklee, or rather, I finished Berklee in '94. I was hanging around Boston, being disgruntled.
A disgruntled musician? No way.
I just, at the time, certainly, I wasn't playing very much in Boston. There's a ton of musicians that somehow, and this might have changed. I honestly haven't been back to Boston too many times since then, but it's just there wasn't much playing, not as many clubs. I mean, in New York, there's just as many musicians, if not more. And there's always a place to play somehow, even though some wonderful, legendary places have closed. It's kind of what's great about New York is new ones keep opening up. And, but that said, it was also a long time ago, and I wasn't actively playing at the time. So I was kind of hanging around Boston. I'd gotten an office job at Berklee, and eventually a room came up. I'd been going down to New York to visit some friends of mine, and eventually one of their rooms opened up in a loft, and it was $200 cheaper than living in Boston. Wow,
so, that's weird. That's weird.
I moved to New York because it was cheaper than living elsewhere. Imagine that. That's when I got here.
Yeah, you're like the only person in the city, perhaps, that has that could say that.
I don't know, man. 96 was things were affordable, and you know, you could. I mean, it was 2 other roommates, but it was a big like 1,500 square foot loft. It was in a neighborhood called Dumbo, which has completely turned into a shit show now. It's, of bizarre, you know, sort of leftover artists from that era, and luxury condos, and you know, you can see Manhattan from there. It's under the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, it's down under Manhattan Bridge overpass. That's what Dumbo stands for. And my loft was literally under the bridge, and I had this incredible view on the river from my room. That said, the building itself is and was a garbage recycling center. So you bring certainly in the summer, you know, like my parents came to visit once, and it was a bit hard. Being like, wait, you just got to wait till we get to the room. It's the loft. It's the room itself. It's great. So, you know, that's to me, that was a bit of the charm of, you know, also moving back to that. But, you know, like I said, it was actually cheaper, and you could do $50 gigs. And I just kind of started, honestly, I kind of started my career or playing professional life in New York when I moved here. Like, I just wasn't playing that much in Boston other than jamming with friends, ensembles, that kind of stuff at Berklee. So, you know, I wasn't one of the cats, as you would say, you know, at Berklee. Like, those guys were playing, you know, and later on I ended up playing with a lot of the guys. I was fortunate to end up playing with a lot of the guys that I respected when I was back at Berklee. You know, that helped me moving to New York, knowing a lot of the connections back from Boston. So
was there a culture? So it wasn't too much of a culture like from Boston to New York. It's pretty much a big city, or was it?
Well, West Waspy in New York.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, more diverse.
Oh yeah.
I still appreciate that about New York. And when I go elsewhere, I usually come back to that. I at least appreciate that about New York. So, there's that, you know, I wasn't bonding with Boston too much, but, you know, that said, it's a nice city, and it was just a time in my life when I was like searching and whatnot. So, you know, it's like sometimes you link a place to also your sentiment at the time, which is, you know, struggling with what you're going to do. And that's, so unfortunately I kind of have that feeling with Boston. It's like, oh man, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. And, you know, here I am, I finished school, and what's going to happen. So that was that. But, you know, to back up before that, I did a couple years at UConn, actually, in Connecticut, in a cow town, Storrs, Connecticut. And where I wasn't doing music there. I just came to the States and attending, you know, a liberal arts program, kind of figuring my stuff out. And before that, I was, you know, I mean, you mentioned me living all over the place, and my dad worked in airlines, Italian Airlines. So when I was a kid, when I was 5, he actually came to New York. So I was born in Rome, but then came to New York. We lived over in Jersey. He lived in the city, and I did kindergarten up to 2nd grade here in the States. So I picked up English young. Italian is, you know, my first language, so I still speak it, and I sound as Italian, I guess, as I do American now.
Yeah, you don't. There's like
assuming I sound American, but you know.
No, there's very little, like almost zero trace of an accent.
Right. So I didn't really have a chance to pick one up because I was here so young. And then, but then after being here for about 4 or 5 years, my dad took on a position within the same company. He wanted to travel more. So then we ended up in Africa for 6 years. We went to Ethiopia, went to Ghana, went to Kenya.
Shit.
After that, we were in Bangkok for 2 years, and after that, I was, by that point I was in high school, and I finished high school in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, which is kind of a ridiculous place to go to high school. In a good way.
Oh, okay, yeah. Did you speak Portuguese also?
I did learn Portuguese just because of my facility with Italian, and also if you attend, I was going in all these countries. I continued to attend international schools. Okay. Also known as American schools, where all the foreigners went. I mean, Italian schools weren't really an option, honestly, for because some countries would have one and some wouldn't. So like English is the de facto for everybody in that situation. Pretty much, okay, so like all my classmates were there because of airline, oil, military, like this is what my friends' fathers, or mothers were doing, so, it was, those kind of businesses were the ones traveling abroad and sending their local employees, so to speak, to the country. So, and also like my family moved, probably more than we should have, only because like every time we went to a place, there'd be a government coup.
Oh my God.
So we started thinking it was, the Benedettis are coming, look out, government's about to collapse. So yeah, I mean, like usually my dad was supposed to stay in a place for 4 years. I think that's what he'd signed up for. But then like the airline would just have to like shut down altogether there because something was going on. So, so I had some pretty crazy, pretty great childhood, like very different, and then, but also some, crazy stories. Like it was New Year's Eve in Ghana in the mid 70s, and there was a coup going on and people were shooting outside, but hey, they could have been celebrating. I don't know. But we spent New Year's Eve on the floor with a champagne bottle in the dark, not popping the champagne because who knows, somebody might hear that, think we're shooting back or something, So this
holy crap.
This was like one of the, funny times growing up in the 70s, in these developing countries, and which a lot of them are doing a lot better now. I know that through either some friends that have gone back, or from, I have a friend who's Ethiopian. He went back. He's a musician and he's doing great. And Addis Ababa is doing well. And I, spoke to a cab driver from Ghana a few years ago. He's like, oh yeah, I'm thinking of going back. Accra's doing well. So, I'm glad to hear that stuff's going on. But yeah, I had, and then I go back to Italy in the summers. I mean, like I kind of had, these two homes, wherever my dad was working, and then we'd go. So that was like Italy was kind of a home base where my whole family, except for the Benedettis, was living. And that was until I was 18, and then because I went to American schools, I basically ended up going to an American college. I mean, there was that sort of point in my life where my parents were like, well, are you going to go back to Italy for some college? And, it was a lot easier going to an American college because of my education, so adapting to Italy. And my parents weren't, it's not like they were moving back to Italy. They kept traveling for years after I came to the States for college. So it's not like I would have, had a helping hand there at first. I mean, I had family, but anyways, I mean, like getting an apartment on your own when you're 18 in Italy is very different from doing that in the States.
In what way?
Well, on a bureaucratic level, it's just hard renting. Things might have changed a little bit now, but certainly at the time, it's just, you kind of live with your family in Italy for a long time. And you kind of move out when you get married, and like maybe you buy a home or you rent. But like even just there's weird rental laws that you can't. It's hard to kick people out. You sign a contract for a long time. Like I guess to narrow it down, the idea of signing a 1-year lease. Not really, like maybe now it's happening in the bigger cities in Italy, but definitely not a thing.
Really? So you're signing like what, a 5-year lease or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just a more complicated place to live. It's just, and it's getting easier now, but it's still a country that struggles with a lot of like menial things. I mean, there was a time when going to the bank and getting gas and going to the post office all in the same. I mean, that's your day. If you get 2 of those done out of 3, I mean, that's pretty good. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's ridiculous.
No, I couldn't.
You can deposit a check with your cell phone now, even before the cell phone thing, but even 10 years ago before, it's always been easier, that kind of stuff in the States. I mean, it's always been funny for me to go back and forth and like witness just how some things are that much more difficult, it's just small things like that, and that's, the U.S. has definitely, the American lifestyle has streamlined a lot of those things, which I think helps a lot in small businesses, entrepreneurs, like getting your own thing going in the States. I mean, it's kind of what the American dream is known to be, that's what it is. It's like, it's easy to set up a business license. I mean, I could do that. You can do that all in a day, and just
online. You can do that online.
Online, exactly. Start a business, get a website going, all that stuff. So, anyways, that's so yeah, kind of a crazy. And youth but eventually I ended up back in the States. Like I said, I went to UConn, a bit of an odd choice. I mean, I wasn't certainly not an A student, but just, we're trying to think back to like 1989. There's no computers. I don't, my parents, both Italian, didn't have the experience of looking for for college after. Neither of them went to college. So even for them, it was something new. So I remember like going to the consulate, American consulate with my mom, looking at those big ass catalogs that, were college catalogs at the time, sifting through and trying to figure out. Like,
so you have no frame of reference.
Yeah, no. And like my parents, like, where do we send our kid? What can we afford? I wasn't eligible for financial aid.
Oh,
yeah,
just because you weren't a citizen or you weren't a state resident.
Some help from my dad's company, just with education, they would pay like 50% or something like that. I'm not sure if that applied to college. Honestly, I should ask them and thank them once again.
You should have gone to Baruch, man. It's $23 a credit. I'm just a little bit older than you. That's the best value I ever got in my life.
Really? Yeah. Well, I think UConn wasn't too expensive. That's probably also why I ended up there. I mean, my brother, who's older, I have one brother, and he's a year and a half older than me. He went off first. I mean, he ended up, his first place was in Carbondale, Illinois. I mean, talk about that's culture.
Yeah, for sure, man.
From Rio de Janeiro to Carbondale, Illinois. But that's we were very Americanized by the time, because we'd been to basically a bizarre version of an American high school.
Yeah. Where are your folks now? Are they still around?
No, they're back in Rome. Yeah, my dad retired about 12 years ago or so.
And they're just chilling in Rome. Wow. I'm exhausted just listening to that. I'm thinking I had a boring ass. I had a boring ass youth compared to that. So what was so what was the good, the bad, and the ugly about growing up with that as your backdrop, as it, either challenges about living here or your outlook on life, maybe even on relationships? Like what was the fallout? I don't mean fallout negatively, just, the fallout of that.
I mean, a lot of that stuff didn't come to me until, I was well into being a proper adult, not 18 or so, but just reflecting on what it meant, and who I was later on. So, it's something that I think about all the time. But I mean, at the time, doing what we were doing didn't seem strange to me, because that's all I knew, you know. And so here we go. We're changing country again. Yay, It started getting harder when I was about, it was kind of exciting until I was like 13. Then, relationships with friends, because it was always the same cycle. I lived in every country. I think I did 2 grades in each country. And then finally in Brazil, for my high school, I was lucky to get 3 years. And I really think that was kind of a blessing. But the 2-year thing is what happens is you end up, your first year, you're just like the new kid, and you're just kind of keeping things to yourself. Your second, and then you make some friends. The second year, you're getting to know those friends, and then boom, off you go again.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
But, at the time, I didn't think that much of it. It's more later on, I realized it probably did affect me. I don't know if I would have been the way I am had I lived in the same place my whole life, but I am pretty malleable. I'm a pretty social person, and I'm pretty able to situations, but I probably also have attachment issues. I have, I can quickly, connect with somebody, and maybe that's because I lived in so many places, but at the same time,
you could probably quickly disconnect.
Maybe I've had a hard time getting closer to people, or allowing myself to get closer to friends and relationships,
Sure.
Because of it. So that's like a reflection on my past that I don't know, my brother's not the same personality as I, so I don't, and he had the same life. So yeah, I'd say he's a little bit less social than I am. So who knows? I might have just been this way regardless. So, but anyways, obviously it must have affected me somehow. I mean, I mostly think it's positive. I think it's fantastic. It was such a different way of growing up. my parents, I mean, also my dad wanted to travel. So like being in each country, like they would travel even more, you know, so they would all just kind of launching pads for other adventures, you know, like every weekend we'd be off and doing something, going somewhere, you know, a safari in Africa or like visiting other places, or we, you know, and because we flew for free.
Oh yeah.
That, you know, that was just like, you know, we'd go visit like places that I just can't see being able to visit, you know, and so their interest in the world facilitated me seeing more. And I can't say that was true for everybody who lived in these countries. I remember going to see some friends' houses, and I'm not pointing fingers here, but certainly us, the American kids in general, like lived pretty different lives. I mean,
yeah,
they'd show up to a home with air conditioning, carpeting. They had what's called a commissary, which is a glorified, I don't know if you've been to like a fancy Korean deli here in New York, but essentially it's one of those, like a slightly upscale, you know, still with
like a bodega plus.
Bodega plus, yeah. So you get your Oreo cookies in the middle of, you know, of Ethiopia or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you could get all your American junk at the time, but of course that was the cool thing to get when you were going to an American school. So you know, I just remember like, ooh, you know, he's got a Coke can. We're drinking out of Coke bottles. You know, now of course the Coke bottle's cool and the can is nothing. But
correct.
You know, these are like little things like that were fun to think about. But you know, like we didn't have air conditioning because it was prohibitively expensive. My dad's earning in Italian currency. The lira at the time was half the dollar.
Oh my God.
You know, like gas, there was a gas shortage, a legendary gas shortage. I remember like in Ghana at the time that, you know, you have to leave your car there for a couple of days. You know, my American friends had a driver. Guess who's sitting in line for a couple of days? You know what I mean? It's like,
wow.
We lived slightly different versions of that country, which also, I mean, I don't know, I guess it kind of led to a little bit more isolated, you know, everybody lived in the same neighborhood, that kind of thing. I was lucky. I'm just trying to say that, like, my parents were explorers, you know, like my dad was an explorer at heart. And so that's led to more adventures than maybe some other folks. I mean, he had colleagues as well who were kind of a little bit scared of the situation. They ended up there for work and they're like, okay, let's just kind of stay home and, you know, minimize potential, you know. Are
you still like that? Do you like exploring?
Yeah, I think my wife would agree with me. She's like let's do the same thing over and over. You know, she'll find a walk that she likes and she'd be happy doing that.
Right.
As a routine. I'm like, we've done that walk. That's it. Like let's go somewhere.
That was last week's walk. Yeah. We're done.
And
that's great, man. We're done.
She also, but I also like, I'll organize a trip for us and she appreciates that. So.
Now you don't change wives every 2 years, do you?
No.
That would be very costly, man.
Same one. We've been married since 2007 and together since 2001.
Good for you, man. That's a nice long time. Congratulations. That's a big accomplishment. Wow. That's like, I feel really like a boring human being. I have nothing to offer here, Luca.
I mean, but you know, like I will say, since, you know, this initiated as a music podcast, like, unfortunately, I didn't get to hear a lot of things that I'd like to have heard back in the time. You know, I never got to hear Juju music live, which is, you know, that's the like in Ghana, King Sunny Ade, these guys. I mean, shit, I wish I'd heard those guys back live in the 70s. You know, or I probably could have gone across the border and heard Fela Kuti. You know, so there's all these things that, you know, like my parents weren't adventurous in the sense that they weren't music fans at the time, that we didn't go hear that kind of stuff. We listened to classical music at home. You know? That's
like very Italian.
Yeah, totally. So
I had a lot of my Italian friends where they were first generation, and that's what was playing, man, all the time.
It's like Italian songs in the car driving somewhere, you know. So
right.
Unfortunately, at the time I didn't get to hear it. Later on, I will say that with Brazil, like it did sink in, like I got to hear some stuff there. I became a bigger fan of Brazilian music later on. But certainly like being able to go back and just link even just the country and, where the music came from, like, Girl from Ipanema has a much bigger meaning to me than I think most people who just hear it in an elevator.
Yeah.
Because I lived in Ipanema. That's the first place I lived.
Cool.
So like, I know the feeling. It does actually work really well. It links up perfectly with the feeling that you would, get by living there and whatnot. But the other thing I was going to say is that I have a funny thing I tell friends when they bring up some pop culture references, like, what, you don't know that band? And it's not even like something that they're a fan of. It's just like some band you're supposed to know about, some hit you're supposed to know about because you heard it your whole life,
Right.
And, my answer is like, hey, man, I was in Africa. Like I don't.
Yeah. I totally.
I missed half the TV shows, like, like as far as like relating to somebody who grew up in the States, like I missed a lot of like weird.
Well, just not weird, but just
their culture. Like for me,
pop culture.
So the way I got introduced to music was just through little bits and pieces that would pop up, or like, because of course the American kids were going back to the States, they would bring back stuff and whatnot. So, these are the. I just had the opposite of, oh man, I started playing guitar because I got to see so and so, and it was inspiring. And my friend, so it was just, somehow it came around.
Well, how did that, moving back and forth, like how did that come up? Because like, when did you have time to sit and do that? If you're all, you sound like you're pretty much on the go all the time.
Well, we weren't my dad wasn't a pilot. We would stay in a place so like I had a regular upbringing in terms of like coming home and having the time after school to do what I wanted. As far as the guitar goes, my mom actually was the one who wanted to learn the guitar, and her mother gave her a classical guitar at some point. I must have been about 12 or something. And so she had this guitar, and, the first guitar lesson I remember was actually a group guitar lesson by this woman who at the American school had advertised that she was like giving guitar lessons. And, but it's like my mom, my brother, and myself all went to this lesson. We were passing the guitar along to each other. We were learning like Tom Dooley on one.
Dude, that's classic.
But that didn't stick. Like that. I remember that lesson, and I'm not even sure that we ever went to another one. But I just remember that lesson, and I don't remember it sticking. And then
it's really hard for a family to take a guitar lesson.
Very odd and very hard. But and also I didn't have a connection to like what the guitar could do, or there was nothing. It was just, hey kids, I want to get a guitar lesson. My mom probably didn't have a babysitter for that day and just took us. It was more for her, So, but we all ended up playing a little bit. But so somehow I remember that lesson. But I do remember that it took a few more years. The guitar just was sitting around at home, and then my brother was kind of playing it off and on. It wasn't until I was 15 or 16. I think I went to. By that point I was listening to some rock and roll and whatnot. But again, I had such weird records in my house. Like to me, rock was the Grease soundtrack. My mom somehow had that record.
Oh wow!
And then Beethoven was loud and cranking. I appreciate it. I appreciate always that my parents had a nice stereo system. It was nice Marantz receiver. I don't think they knew anything about. They weren't audiophiles, but I think they went into the store and like, well, this is what we have. What can we get? And they got like a classic '70s system, which is two big ass speakers, a nice Marantz, a nice turntable. Everything was like, for nowadays, it's high end, and they used to enjoy like playing classical music loud, which I think is great. Like I see little kids now wearing earmuffs, and that's become a thing. Which hey, sure, preserve your hearing, but I like thinking back to those times when my parents would crank, music through those speakers, and it was a joyful experience for me, so hearing that. Somehow I remember, I think the first tape I ever got was, and this was given as a gift. from a couple friends that came back from the States, and they showed up with 2 cassette tapes for my brother and I. They didn't give them to and my brother, who was older, got to pick, of course, or rather snatched one. And one was Crosby, Stills and Nash, Deja Vu. Yeah. The other one was Zeppelin In Through the Outdoor, which I think had only been released, like, I think, what is that, 80? I feel like
it was a later album, yeah.
Yeah. What a weird Zeppelin album to get as your first record.
Yeah, it really is. It's like, that was a very weird Zeppelin.
My brother picked, got this the CSN tape. He picked that, so I ended up with the Zeppelin. Either would have been a great record, but I love that to death, simply for the fact that it was mine. I didn't entirely grasp what was going on. There's a country song on there.
It was a weird record.
It's a weird record, but I love that record, because it was mine. I played it till I wore out the tape, so that was, I'm thankful that I got that. I mean, sometimes I think I might have started off playing sooner if I'd gotten Zeppelin 1, you know what I mean? It's like, hey, I can relate to a 12-bar blues,
Yeah, it's a lot more accessible musically.
Yeah. So, so that's kind of how I was starting to get an interest in music, so I got that then, and this was kind of so early 80s, and everybody kind of had a favorite rock/metal band. And so my brother, again, this is also when I started not getting along with my brother, or maybe vice versa. He decided to start kind of separating friends and tastes a little bit, which happens with brothers.
You guys get along now?
Siblings, we do.
Yeah. Where is he? Is he in the city also?
He's in London right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He went back to Italy for a while, though. He just moved there a few years ago.
Dude, you guys sound so glamorous. I'm like, in my apartment in the Bronx growing up, I'm like, this is really cool. I'm going to live vicariously through you now for the next 40 minutes.
But, so I just remember, he got into rock. So then I was like, okay, I guess I'll get into it too. Obviously I was into it because I was listening to Zeppelin and whatnot. But then he got an Iron Maiden tape somehow, What's the album with Number of the Beast on it? I forget what that's called.
It was Number of the Beast, maybe. I don't even know.
Was it? Yeah.
I think it was, yeah.
The one. That one. And so I was like, well, I got to get one. So I remember my dad went on a business trip back to Italy, and I honestly had no idea how I picked them, but I'm still glad I did. But I said, all right, AC/DC will be my band. Like, he picked Iron Maiden, and I was like, AC/DC will be my band. And I don't remember why I did that, But my dad brought back For Those About to Rock, and man, that was just like something else. I still remember putting that on that stereo that they had, and just sitting in front of it, and just
that was a great album.
What the hell, For Those About to Rock with the bells and everything, just like that was so that that and then from then on you start getting curious, started getting curious and exploring other stuff. But it was a few years later. I just remember the guitar came to me, I guess, just sitting in a friend's room, and he was playing along to Back in Black or something, and I mean, this might sounds so silly, but it hadn't occurred to me that somebody other than AC/DC could play their music somehow.
No, that makes sense. I totally get that.
I was like, what the hell? And I was like, this guy's playing that song. I can do that, And then somehow I got my dad to. It's oddly enough, my roots of being an obsessive researcher started early, because I remember buying guitar magazines and trying to. I was like, Dad, what can you afford? And then I started looking obsessively.
Dad, what can you afford?
A beginner guitar,
man. Oh my God. So,
again, on some other business trip to Italy, he I sent him with 3 or 4 guitars, and he came back saying the music store guy was impressed. He's like, your kid did some good research, which I did simply by buying the guitar magazines that were around at the time and just looking up stuff. So, and he comes back with I still remember it was an Aria Pro 2 or something like that,
right.
Black kind of metal guitar or something, and so that was I don't know. And I guess my story is simply, I just haven't put it down since that. I got that guitar and I just kind of kept playing. I prod all my friends who were already playing guitar. I invited a couple friends over that same day. I was like, look what I got, And, oh yeah, that reminds me of my first lesson. There was a guy. So I think this is funny because it's this guy, if I ever get in touch with him, I keep meaning to. There's a guy named Doug Hawk. I just remember his name. He advertised in guitar magazines, just on the side, those little small print things.
Yeah,
and,
classified ad.
Yeah, classified ad. Metal lessons or something like that,
Metal lessons.
Yeah, I ordered like 3 of his tapes, like number 1, 2, and 3 or something like that. And those were like, I got those. I think I ordered them while my dad was like away, so I kind of got them at the same time. But I still think to this day, I bet that dude in 1986 had never gotten an inquiry from Brazil.
Yeah,
some metal lessons. Like maybe he hadn't, but he's huge. He's got like 2-page advertisements. Or last time I looked in a Guitar Player magazine.
Wait, now he's got 2-page advertisements?
Oh man, he became his method went pretty deep. Like he ended up. I remember like finding like 2-color ads in Guitar Player magazine.
Really?
Maybe this was 10 years ago. Like, I don't think he has those anymore because of the internet and whatnot.
Yeah.
But like I'm gonna say like right around like 99 or 2000, I remember like opening up one of these magazines. Like there he is. I should get in touch with him.
You should, man.
He helped me out. So yeah, he showed me my first power chord. So like I remember inviting a few friends over. Like, man, I got my first guitar, and like I knew actually like a couple like just kind of like Chuck Berry type things, and how to use I had a distortion pedal, so and yeah, that was fun, And then I just kind of stuck with it, but it wasn't. Yeah, then fast forward a little bit. I mean, I didn't. Like I said, I went to UConn. I mean, I finished high school, and by then I'd been playing 3 years. That's it. Then I did like 2 years of school at UConn, and I did some music. My first like formal education happened there. I took some like sort of beginner theory courses there. They had like a decent little jazz program there, and that was it. I was just hooked. Like I just wanted to know more and whatnot, and after a couple of years there, I clearly seemed quite lost to my parents. And I remember them asking me like, well, what are you going to do? I was doing like, I don't know, my latest major was like anthropology, like cultural anthropology or something.
That's very, very European of you.
Well, it was more like I'd been in these places where that was a thing, like, hey, I'm going to go dig up a site or something. Or, I was in Kenya when Leakey, the anthropologist, discovered Lucy, like one of our ancestors. So I kind of stuck with me. I was like, maybe that's what I'll do because that's my background. But there was always like a bug, like how do I play guitar in the middle of nowhere? That always like was a problem with that situation, And then at some point they're like, well, what do you want to do? And, mind you, I was playing guitar all the time, like kind of.
Were you playing out gigs or just like by yourself?
No, just like in the room, jamming with people, sitting in with bands, on campus and things. But like, any opportunity I had to play, this again, like it's just kind of a weird upbringing with guitar, like just the opposite of, it didn't have a high school band. I didn't join my high school band. So many like little details that are like left out of like the sort of usual path into music, Like I see little kids now that like I'm even teaching, like, man, the opportunities, to start young and be great by the time you're 13, which is what's happening now. I missed all that, what I mean? So, but the passion was there and the dedication was there, and I just kind of stuck with it. But at some point after a couple of years of UConn, my parents were just like, "What are you thinking of doing? Like, what's happening?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just want to do music." And they're like, "Well," and I was really scared of telling them, and they were like, "Well, why did you go to music school?" Like it would just seem like, I still.
Wow, that was such a cool response, especially in light of that you were scared. That's so cool.
They're the best. And there I go. So then I was like, wow, okay. So then Berklee was close by. That's, there weren't that many other options at the time, like music programs have gotten pretty incredible and everywhere. Yeah, can have pretty much anywhere you can go. But at the time it was like it was not MIT. MI. Let's leave the T out.
Yeah.
It was like MI, Berklee, And then
USC.
the smaller programs like at UConn and whatnot, which were great. I just, I had a teacher there. I started doing some lessons at UConn already, but, so that was it. Like once I embarked on that path, I got myself a private teacher. Mind you, I was like in UConn. My parents were still living in Brazil. I'd go back. I got lessons from some amazing Brazilian guys who'd gone to Berklee, and so I started getting into there. But then, I ended up in Boston at Berklee, and I was just a sponge. Like, give me anything, and I'll try and absorb it. And and then I started playing more, but it was odd because even Berklee didn't have auditions at the time. Notoriously, sort of got some slack for that. They were pretty open.
So like anybody can get in. Interesting.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. You didn't have to have much to get in. And honestly, I was one of those people. Like, I didn't have that much of a music background. I'm still thankful, that I got in, because what happened is I had all these tapes that I'd recorded, with a 4-track, with my little handy Tascam, and with my friend who had one too. And like, we just were recording all kinds of jams. And I showed up at school. I prepared some classical piece, and I had this tape. And the guy's like, well, what have you, I was like, well, I've done like 2 music classes. I started like when I was 16, like there just wasn't that much to go on, but the guy liked what he heard on the tape is actually kind of what happened, like and it was me just kind of jamming over some chords, and he went with what was on the tape, and I'm still thankful that he heard something in me, and they accepted me at the time. Because despite there being no auditions, I actually didn't even have that much. Like, you have to present like a musical recommendation letter or something. I had like a guitar teacher at UConn, and I had the jazz teacher there, and they, I'd done some classes, but it wasn't that much to go on. So some guy had some faith in me, and the rest is.
Remember, sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
Somebody just believing in you a little bit and giving you a shot.
Yeah. And that was great. So then I had some pretty intense time going I only had to do 2.5 years to get a degree there, because I'd gotten my 2 years worth of liberal arts classes. So, the music part was 2.5 years at Berklee, and then I stuck around 2 more years in town. And then that's, by then it's 96. And, like I said, I moved to
what made you get a master's? You went to get a master's, though. That's a lot of freaking music education now. It is a lot of music education. Yeah. Well, part of it, honestly, is I also needed a visa to keep staying in the country. Oh, okay.
So, I showed up as a student. I'm still not a citizen. I have a green card because I married my wife, so I'm a permanent resident. But at the time I just needed to keep staying in the country, student visa after student visa. And then eventually I went to the master's. And then after that, I had 6 more years of getting artist visas. By then I was getting what you call an artist visa, which are really hard. Yeah.
Because you can't do anything else. Yeah. Because you can't do you're not allowed to earn income. Like, you can't go work at McDonald's even.
No,
not that there's anything wrong with McDonald's.
No, exactly. So, with the student visa, you get like this 1 year after you're done with your studies to it's called training. You get like an extra year of training, which is, I ended up doing like working at Berklee, but I wasn't doing anything musical. Yeah. I was actually working in the admissions office, letting in kids like myself. I was the international guy because I spoke a couple languages.
Did you hook people up though? Like, did you give, because of your experience, were you more benevolent at giving people the benefit of the doubt?
I was, and I will say I actually got an award for working in that department. It was pretty funny. I was actually pretty good at it. Mostly because like I managed to streamline a bunch of stuff that was really funny at the time. Like, this is before email, there's faxes and phone calls, and like you get some kid from like, Africa trying to get in. It's just like, I know this letter's not going to get to the kid in time for them to respond. So I was like, can I call these people? And this is still when shit was really expensive. Like,
right.
Really expensive to call, other countries. But they gave, they were like, yeah, okay, do that. That's fine. So I started calling people, and I'd call people, and, I spoke Portuguese. So I'd call people in Brazil. I could speak some Spanish between the two and stuff like that. So actually, I was kind of, I got a lot of people in that, maybe, I helped a lot of people in that
yeah,
job.
That's really cool.
And I kind of made some changes in that department, I think. And I mean, I was like 22 or something, 23. It's pretty funny, that I did anything. But anyways, that was, but I got some work experience, at least as far as working in an office. And knowing I didn't want to do that. It's important to do shit that you don't want to do, to know what you want to do. So
yeah, man, absolutely. And now,
so that was good.
But you're you're moving between Brooklyn and Canada?
No, that was a part of my website that I since updated. I lived in Vancouver from 2014 to 2016. My wife got a gig out there.
Oh, okay.
But we kept our place here that we were kind of renting on and off so that I could come back. I was coming back like twice a month because before we left, I was playing like 5 days a week. So I wanted to keep a foot in the door in case it didn't work out.
Yeah, sure.
I went there with her with an open mind, trying to be like, maybe we're going to move, maybe we're not, but let's check it out. Sure. I'm into that. But,
yeah, sure.
My heart was still in New York. Things were pretty, like, kind of picking up for me nicely in New York. And then, but, again, she got this gig. That was a minimum of 2 years. So we were out there. And, but I've been back since 2016 now.
So do you consider yourself a New Yorker? I mean, like, you like the vibe? You feel like that's home there? Or do you think you got another couple of moves in you or what? With this political situation. It's hard to know shit. Yeah. Cause she's still got the visa thing going. Oh, yeah. You may have a move in you. It may not be voluntary though.
Well, there's that whole thing. Like, also even considering whether getting citizenship is worth it at this point, because it's like, hey, it might not even mean anything,
Yeah, no.
Let's not go down.
No. But it's
we
stuff
love
that
New
you
York.
got to think about one way or another.
No, I love New York. My wife loves New York. And like, kind of leaving sometimes makes you, appreciate somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure, man.
So not to say that, like, Vancouver is a highly loved place, and it's a beautiful place to go. The winter is not for us. It's very gray and rainy. And I got to leave a lot because I was coming back to New York a lot, but my wife was there a lot. She started really getting down from it. But I've been here in New York since '96. So that's minus those 2 years. That's still
it's a long time.
A while. So I'd say I live. This is the most I've lived in any one place. Is New York. So. And it means a lot to me. Obviously, it's just constantly inspiring. And any night of the week, I can go out and get inspired, or I get my ass kicked, or whatever it is.
Sure.
And that's I came to realize even more after leaving New York. I'm living in Vancouver for a few years. Just like the quality, the level, and
everything is stepped intensity wise, and I don't want to sound mean to any other places, but everything there is a lot more intense.
Yeah. And it's just,
I like that personally.
I like that too. I mean, it might be overwhelming for some people, but it also made me realize, because I didn't have the perspective, because my professional life started here sort of from ground up. I didn't have the perspective of like the kid who was already playing somewhere else.
Oh, you weren't the big fish in the small town.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So then, like, you leave somewhere and then you like come back and you're like, oh man, like I see the appeal even more of just like leaving wherever you are and like just coming here, like really. And there's incredible players that are living here right now that I probably will never hear. Because I don't know who they are right now, and they might have to go back to where they came from, whether it's another country or a town, in 2 years.
Sure.
I'll never know they were here. I mean, it's just that crazy of a town, But I love that about New York.
How did you kind of have a bent towards country, oddly enough? And I was just wondering, like, you didn't grow up they weren't playing country music in Africa. I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but I think that's a safe bet. They weren't playing country music in Brazil. How did you get this affinity for country?
I will say I had a friend from North Carolina in Kenya who was into, I'd go to his house and he'd play me Kenny Rogers, and I was trying to get him into AC/DC at the time. I always remember that. So I think I heard Kenny Rogers quite young.
And that's not country though.
Yes and no, but I just mean, like, who knows? It kind of, I do remember his name. You know what I mean? Like, something still stuck. I just remember he was more successful, and I left there being like, that's cool too. You know, I love AC/DC, and I love Kenny Rogers now too. Why not? You know, but I remember turning him on to AC/DC didn't work. No, the country thing. I mean, I think maybe because my name's gotten out there in the past 5 years more so than 10 years ago, and it's because I was going through a phase of exploring more country. That's why it seems like, you know, it is. I mean, it is a big part of me at this point, but yeah, it's not. It's just one of many music curiosities I've had. I mean, it's a guitar-driven music. First of all, it's very guitar-friendly. It swings. It can be funky. A lot of great jazz players played country music. You know, your Billy Byrds, Hank Garlands, Thumbs Carlisle. I mean, these guys play the shit out of jazz. You know, I mean, like, and so, like, there's so many things, and you know, it's like my friend once said it's the white man's blues, and I kind of said, you know, I kind of agree with that. You know, there's a little bit less of, you know, I'm trying to be a black guy playing the blues guitar, you know, with country music, you know what I mean? So maybe it's a little bit more relatable from my end of the spectrum than that. I mean, of course, jazz has, you know, a big history of guys with an Italian last name playing jazz guitar. So there's that. But it wasn't, you know, I mean, I was a metalhead when I started. Yeah. You know, then I moved into blues territory, Stevie Ray, Jeff Beck, Albert Collins, all these guys. Then the jazz bug hit me when I went to Berklee, like full on jazz snob, you know. Then the groove bug hit me. I discovered funk, you know, and that's, you know, like when I moved to New York, it was there was a revival for it was kind of like the lounge music scene. There was a lot of like funk stuff going on. All the Herbie Hancock Headhunter stuff was getting a new breath of fresh air. Mineski Martin and Wood, you know, I saw them play upstairs in the Middle East. That's a club in Cambridge, you know, like, you know, they weren't as big as they are now. Like, so I got into like the funk thing, you know, I mean, I've always had a music with a groove has always appealed to me. So, African music. I mean, I had a teacher, I took an African course at UConn, and just because I was like, yeah, I lived in Africa, I should take this credit in African music. And the teacher loved Ghanaian music. She gave me her tape, which to this day I feel terrible because she said, please promise me you'll give it back. And then of course I moved and I found the tape when I left Connecticut. I found it. I was like, oh no. And I couldn't email her. I couldn't get in touch with her. And like to this day, I still feel guilty. I didn't give her King Sunny Ade tape back, but that was a great tape. Anyways, I've always been, so there's all that before country, but I was always kind of aware of country. You know, I was aware of just like, you know, I was reading guitar magazines like everybody else, you know, you know, to me, like 1989 was kind of the year of Elmira Street by Danny Gatton, Guitar Shop by Jeff Beck, Passion and Warfare, Steve Vai, Steve Morse, High Tension Wires. You know, it was such a guitar driven time, you know, and it was also that transition between total shred and, you know, Nirvana, like, let's go back to not shredding, which by the time Nirvana came out, I went to Berklee and became a jazz snob for a bit. So you know, like I missed that whole thing. So I kind of went from one kind of shred into like bebop shred and all that other stuff, like Pat Martino and these guys, Wes Montgomery. So I don't really entirely know, like Steve Moore's played country as far as I'm concerned. He's got that song with Albert Lee called General Lee on, what album is that? It's a Steve Moore. It's a Dixie Dregs.
Dixie Dregs, yeah.
General Lee, so it's kind of always been there. It's like, it wasn't, and then this, I guess fast forward to about 2012 or 13 when I started playing a little bit with my friend Jason Loughlin. I don't know if you've interviewed him yet.
No, we've spoken. He's on.
Put him on your radar.
Yeah, we're on each other's radar. Yeah, we spoke.
And he was, I kind of got into bluegrass first, sort of.
There's a lot of guys up in New York now. That's a big. I'm sure you know. Do you know Grant?
Gordy.
Yeah, great guy, man. A really cool guy.
Yeah. There's a huge scene. All the Punch Brothers were living here for a while too.
Yeah. I got Chris coming on the show real soon.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Good guy.
But I've always been, maybe it's kind of like my background, but I've just kind of been all over the place.
Yeah.
But there's always been, I would say the common thread has always been time, important for me. Time meaning groove, but also just like players with great time, and music with great time. So maybe a little bit less classical music, I love listening to it, but I haven't dug into that as much. I'll listen to it.
One thing you do, and I don't pretend that the 5 or 6 YouTube videos I watch of you is like representative of the population of Luca Benedetti's performance. But one thing I noticed about you that is kind of different, you're very connected to visually, not just sonically. You're very connected and engaged with the other band members. That's not very as common,
Well, I try and do that for sure.
Like you're enjoying their performance. It's almost like,
Yeah. There was a time when I wasn't enjoying every band I was in. So I'm glad.
Wow. That's called tuition.
I'm glad that the YouTube videos that are out there are, reflective of this period in my life where I've just, I've learned, I've figured out how to be part of more projects that I love.
Yeah.
And be more selective and whatnot. So I think that's the kind of the presence I have, at least on YouTube and whatnot. That's good. I'm glad you said that. I guess.
Yeah, it seemed like you're engaged, like you're having fun with them, like as a almost as a spectator as much as a performer. Right. It was just like you seem really happy up there, really engaged. You don't, and you're like a lot of verbal cues. It was more interaction than normal. Not that it's bad normally. I noticed that it was interesting. I thought it was kind of cool.
There's a lot of smiling in country music, so maybe that's also the appeal there. It's an honest music. It's like an earnest music, and I'm talking about like the shit that I like to listen to, like the Leon Rhodes, Ernest Tubb kind of era stuff.
That's way back,
all the way into like Merle, James Burton, Roy Nichols stuff, and whatnot. And but I also learned a little bit of looking around stuff from Jim Campilongo, who's such a charismatic guy.
Yes, really.
He's always looking around, and I was like, I like that. I like connecting, and so I try and do that. I make a point of it, actually. Just look around. Sometimes I forget. Honestly, I used to be very guilty of staring at my instrument and doing that a lot. I've had people tell me, I wish you smiled more, kind of thing. So it's not like it's something I've always done. I think maybe I did actually put some effort into that.
Well, good, man.
And I like it.
Talk about that. I want to talk about, you mentioned Jim. Let's talk about some of the projects you're involved with, because I know like you're really excited about a couple of them. So let's talk about that Honeyfingers album, Last Night This Morning. It's got 3 guitars plus a lap steel or a pedal steel, which is obviously a pretty cool guitar record. What did you like best about getting involved in that project?
So that album's sort of the culmination of that group, and also that sort of maybe me being really involved in that style, sort of like Western swing type thing. And rewind to that period I was saying when I kind of met Jason. I was getting into bluegrass, and that Jason was playing some of the Telly stuff. I'd started a little band called North of Amarillo, which is now a bigger band. We were playing. I just wanted to play. I had a bootleg of Emmylou Harrison, the Hot Band, and I loved those arrangements. And I was like, I got to play this with somebody. I was playing it with this great singer called Margo Valiante. At the time, we did a few gigs. I didn't know any steel players. Jason played the steel parts. So, but through him, I started meeting some other people. He recommended me on a gig, literally a little, and I listened to Jim's interview, so I know he mentioned this was a distillery. It's like a gin distillery called the Shanty here in New York. I mean, it's solid. It's just a small space. It's got a cool vibe. And this guy, Johnny Lamb, who's now a very, very good friend and the pedal steel player on that record. It was his gig. It was just him on steel, me on Telly, and I forget who the first bass player was we played that day with. But that was it. He just asked me if I could come by on a Saturday. It was like a $20 gig and get some free drinks Saturday afternoon. Sure, I'd love to. I go down there, and that started a whole chemistry between Johnny Lamb and myself. And that, in a sense, was the beginning of Honeyfingers. Honeyfingers being a song by the Troubadours.
Okay.
Leon Rhodes and the Troubadours, or Ernest Tubb and the Troubadours, but Leon Rhodes and damn it, I'm spacing out on his steel player. It'll come to me. But yeah, so that's how I met Johnny. And then through that gig, that became a regular gig. Like Johnny and I bonded, and we started coming up with a repertoire and like kind of bringing all these tunes. We started doing all these transcriptions, the Jimmy Bryant stuff, Speedy West. And I got more into that. I was aware of those guys, but that's kind of where I started digging my heels in a little bit more. And I'm into transcribing and all that. So, eventually he got his friends, Dave Speranza on bass and Roy Williams, who's now has expanded to be, he's just a wonderful artist all around. But at the time, he was the rhythm guitar player in Stefan Rimbel's Gypsy Jazz Band. Now, Stefan Rimbel is like the number one, one of the top guys. He's been in New York forever, and he's a French player. He's a ridiculous, gypsy jazz virtuoso who does the Django thing. Like every Sunday at Barbez, that's his night.
That's in Brooklyn.
Barbez, yeah, it's like blocks from me here.
Man, you must know Smokey Hormel.
I sure do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know he plays there. His interview just came out today, funny enough.
Oh, really?
He's got more stories, that guy, than any human being I've ever spoken to. I mean, he's lived. Yes, he's deep. And I just played with his fiddle player last week, Charlie Burnham. So we're like, that's cool.
In touch. And Smokey's cool. He got me on a session once that he couldn't do. That was a lot of fun. And so, just kind of put me in his world for a second. I was like, man, this guy's doing some fun sessions, and they pay well.
Good.
So that's cool. He's great. I almost went to hear him last night. Now I regret not going. Damn it. But he plays down in Red Hook at Sunny's every Wednesday.
Yeah, he's there with his like Western Swing guys.
That's right. Right. Oh. He can't play next week, so my band's actually going to play instead of his band. So we're playing next Wednesday. My bar band, which is called Luca and the Leftovers. But we'll talk about that later. Anyways, back to Honeyfingers. So that became a thing. Like Roy Williams, great gypsy guitar player, like total virtuoso as well, who was being Stefan's rhythm guitar player. Stefan always has a rhythm. In that band, you always need the guy behind you with the rhythm. He'd get a few solos too, but so all of a sudden it's me, Johnny Lamb, Dave Speranza, Roy Williams. In essence, that's the original real Honeyfingers, and it was great because, you listen to those Jimmy Bryant records and there is a dude playing pretty much that style guitar, like that's the drive, that's the drummer, and that was just such a treat. And what happened is I played a gig at Brooklyn Bowl that Jim came to hear. And mind you, I was a Jim fan since he moved to New York. I'd go hear him at the living room all the time, be like, hey,
he's amazing.
Yeah, and we're we're best buddies now, but like I was a fan long before we met. And and he was playing with friends of mine from Berklee when I first went to hear him. So, also that's how I came to know about him. So anyways, I was at this gig. I played this gig, and I get off stage, and there's Jim Campilongo, who I think showed up to that gig. He told me it was like kind of a crazy night because it had been raining, and he really doesn't go out that much, but he said, I'm going to go out tonight. And his drummer, Josh Dion, was playing that night. And so he was like, yeah, sure, I'll go hear this band, and he came out, and then I recognized him in the crowd. I was like, hey. And Johnny and I started speaking to him, and we're like, man, we're doing this thing on Saturdays. If you want to come down anytime, sit in. I know you did the Jimmy Bryant thing or whatever. And he was like, I think he was kind of taken back by how, earnest we were about the whole thing. And I guess he liked our vibe enough to, come down. And it's down the street from him. He can walk there, this place called the Shanty. So he showed up, and he started showing up and just being a fan. Like it was the funniest thing. It was just this empty, kind of half empty place on a Saturday. And he'd show up, pull up a chair and sit right in front of you. And just like fold his arms and just check the band out. Not
too much pressure.
Yeah, not at all. Jim Campilongo was hanging out right in front of you as you're playing like, his music that he already played, and he's like an expert on it and everything. So that was such a treat. Anyways, and then eventually, of course, it's like, dude, you got to come play with it. You got to come sit in. So he started sitting in. And what happened is eventually, like, we went from like he started getting some gigs. Also, I should say, at some point, we started getting a drummer in on the gig, Russ Meisner, great local drummer. Just been around for a long time, and that was the ultimate configuration of Honeyfingers, which led to playing with Jim. And, what happened is we went from playing covers to kind of starting to play his originals. And we had these like really fun, we still love reminiscing about them, but they were just these really fun rehearsals that we do at Jim's place in his tight little room. And I'm kind of a big mouth, and, it's hard for me to hold back an opinion. And I started like saying, well, what if we do this? And a lot of them were tunes that he recorded already. And I was like, well, what if we do this? Or what if we harmonize this? It wasn't just me, I'm not taking all the credit, but, I did have some ideas, and I'm, he was open to them. He liked them. And so that led to eventually having enough repertoire and saying, shit, we should record this while we have it. We were playing, there's a bunch of videos, Barbez, that same place, Barbez, we played before Stefan. Then we were playing 55 Bar, which is a great playing. And, people were really digging it. I think it was pretty different. It wasn't full on Jimmy, country swing. We're just trying to be that, it's like we're playing with like this very unique guitar player, and all of us were kind of different. Jim and I play Telly. I don't like reverb. He likes reverb. Roy playing gypsy guitar. Johnny Lamb's playing pedal steel. There's, drums, upright bass. Not that lineup hasn't happened before, but there was enough unique voices in there. And
bring something else to the table.
We felt the need to document it. And what came out is we're really proud of it. And the press seemed to like it. I have to imagine maybe if it were 1989, it would have gotten more press, just because it was a very guitar-oriented record. Just because of the way things got out. But I'm not saying it hasn't gotten out there, but it's, how it is nowadays. You hire a publicist for 3 months and that's it. There was no record label behind it.
Yeah.
And we didn't tour. More importantly, we didn't tour very much. We played a couple gigs out of town that went real well, but everybody was pretty busy. And then eventually, Johnny, who's originally a guitar player, went to jazz school. He went back to playing guitar in this band Sin Kane, which got pretty big. They're doing their own thing with David Byrne and all kinds of stuff. And so, he also kind of stopped playing a bit as much steel guitar. And so that band has now turned into Honeyfingers is kind of Johnny Lamb's thing. and he kind of calls different projects. He's even doing it this Friday that I'm not part of. It's just his thing. He just calls his vision of different things Honeyfingers, and it's not specifically that band. And
sure.
In fact, nobody from that band is playing
outside of Johnny.
You know what I mean? So it's just like, that's Johnny's thing now. So he takes that. That's his thing. But we still play some of those arrangements, some of those tunes, and what's turned out to be a duo with myself and Jim.
Oh, that's cool.
So Jim and I have been playing duo and getting a real kick out of it recently. And, we're I don't know. It's not like sort of your typical jazz duo, also because neither of us are, typical jazz players. Although I really appreciate him saying what he said in your introduction. You know what I mean? There's certainly a lot of dudes in town who are, heavier, straight ahead jazz guys than I am. I'm more than happy playing all the different shit that I do. And, having gotten back into roots and old school blues and New Orleans stuff the way I did, that's my heart's in a lot of different places. I mean, things might have been more straightforward for me if I was just a bebop Nazi. No, it's
bebop
true.
Nazi.
I mean, if you stick to one thing, you stick to one thing, and you'll get somewhere like a little bit faster. But I don't know about
that. You got to think about marketability to some extent too. I mean, the audience for that is much more narrow than for Americana, for example.
It's narrow, but people know. Well, I mean, I don't. Yeah, not to. Yeah.
I mean, the people are.
I just mean people know exactly what to think of you. Yeah. I can't say that right now. People know exactly who Luca Benedetti is, partially because
gotcha.
Don't have 10 albums in my name yet. I'm working on that. I'm trying to become more prolific and recording and getting my name out. I mean, I have a bunch of recordings that I'm on in the last few years, but I can't say that it's easy necessarily to find all the stuff that I'm on.
Sure.
Unless you go to my website and want to become, really dig deep into what I've done. But, it's out there. It's not that it's not out there. It's just, I'm still working towards that, still a bit
totally
of a late.
But some of this is like a function of the music industry as a whole. I mean, you make a record, the motivation to make a record, Jim's making a record. Jim's got an audience already built in. If he had to start today, would he make records? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know that anybody would, it's just a very different ballgame. And I think over the next 5 or 10 years, I'm hoping things are going to change and something's going to happen. I don't know what it is, and hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm planning on recording a trio in the fall, and I honestly my goal for it is simply I just want to do something that I'm happy with, and if it just gets put out on Bandcamp, so be it. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I mean, I'd like for it to be more than that for sure. But the other way to do it is just make that a habit and record a couple albums a year and just kind of put them out, and people find you anyways through the internet nowadays, and that's
correct.
You hear it. But it's true. We've completely lost the structure of the record label. That, say what you will about the evil industry. I mean, if you got signed, you did have, the publicist was taken care of, the tour manager was taken care of, you had local PR done and radio stations that you'd have to call it, college stations, you have to call them and all that stuff. So, I've seen that from a perspective because I've worked for some record labels and some off jobs that I've done. And, it's just all time consuming. I mean, you can spend all time not playing music just to get a gig. You know what I mean? So, but that's there's a lot of it's a shifting industry still happening. I don't know that we'll ever go back to that model. So,
something new is going to happen. I just don't know what it is. I would have bet.
And, you could argue that you could record yourself breathing for an hour and put it on Bandcamp, and that's easier to do nowadays than it was in the past. So you can call that whatever you want. So
hey, talk about
that's. I just wanted to say, it's true. I remember about the record thing, kind of I remember asking my friend Avi Bortnick, played with Schofield notoriously in his
I think his interview comes out any day.
Yeah, he's great. But I remember asking him, I really like his tunes. He's got a couple things up on YouTube, and I really like his playing. I was like, man, when are you going to make a CD? It's like, why would I do that? It kind of threw me off. I was like, I don't know. I guess why would you? But I want to hear it. I guess that's the reason, and there's probably a whole bunch of other dudes who'd like to hear it, but he's also right. Like, he also does so much other stuff. He's like a real talented guy, like programs and all kind of stuff. I'll find out more about it, I guess, in your interview.
Yeah, he has a lot of other, his approach to music is, you know what? I don't depend on it as my primary source of income. Some years I have, and it's okay, but I don't have to, so I could step into and out of music as I like because I have other income coming in. And, for him, that's his, everybody's got their own, like, what makes them tick, what allows you to do, what gives you your fulfillment from whatever it is that you're doing.
That said, Avi, if you ever listen to this interview, make a damn record. I want to hear it.
I'm going to put it, I'll make sure I send him a copy when this comes out, so he'll listen to it.
I'll tell him it's, in person.
Talk about Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout, because I know you really like that as well.
Well, also known as the Boog. They've been, so the Boog is my friend Tim Lunsel's band. Tim Lunsel, you might recognize him as a bass player in the first two Campilongo records that were done here in New York. Legendary New York bass player, played with everyone pretty much, and sadly passed away last year from ALS. And he was a friend from Berklee. I used to go hear him as a fan, and because he was like one of the cats, and he had this gig at Avalon. It was like a dance club back in Boston. It was a jazz gig. He kind of played somewhere between straight ahead and avant-garde. But anyways, he's a big guy, sociable, amiable guy. Just such a personality. Everybody loved him and want to be friends with him. And when he came to New York, he moved here a little bit before I did. He put together a band, and they played Boogaloos. It was like Booker T covers, Grant Green, sort of like that soul groove stuff, and it was, and I used to go hear him at a little place called Detour in the East Village, which was a real small drinking hole over on Avenue A, I think, or First Avenue. But I loved it. It was groovy, and it was with all these, like, Chris Cheek, who's like one of the best, like any tenor player in the world knows who Chris Cheek is. He's like one of the top 5 sax players. He's a wonderful, wonderful musician. Plays the saxophone in a way that doesn't sound like the saxophone. So he just plays music, and he always had these guys. Like, his band was always like, it was kind of some steady players, but there was a rotating cast also when somebody couldn't make it. It was always like the who's who's, So like playing with that band was like a thing. And then, it was a bar band. It was like, in the bio, it says like New York's favorite bar band or whatever, and they played for years as an instrumental band. And then, many years ago, they added this ridiculous singer, Leah Siegel, who has her own band called Fire Horse, and she's just a real treat to hear. And then they started doing all this other repertoire that was just soulful, funky stuff. Some originals, but for me, it was always a band to go hear. I'm going to go hear the Boog tonight, and it was always kind of sometimes a surprise who was going to be playing that night. And so, and through the years, like I moved to New York, and I knew Tim on a hug basis, like, hey Tim, what's up? And he had a legendary hug, like he's like a big guy, and he'd like hug you, and then like, cool, that was it. I got to see Tim. Great. Like I couldn't leave the gig. If I saw Tim on a gig, I couldn't leave it without saying hi to Tim, He's that kind of guy. But, we grew closer, like slowly our paths started. I also like to say, I progressed as a player to the point that we started, he was playing in Boston. I wasn't, Like he came to New York ripe to play and playing at a very high level. I didn't, so, it took a while. Eventually our paths started crossing more. At some point we were in weekly residency with Jason Loughlin, playing in his band, the String Gliders, every week, and then he's kind of heard something. And he was like, "Man, why don't you come play with my band?" And I was like, "Holy shit, of course!" I'd also let it out, and we lived close. I would give him a ride every Monday, So like we started getting closer and closer as real friends, and eventually this one day I played like maybe 3 or 4 gigs. And they'd been guitarless for about 3 or 4 years. Not guitarless, but not without a steady guitar player.
Yeah.
Steve Walsh was the guy, and he moved to Prague, I think, and he was great. But so then it was just like a rotating cast of a lot of who's, and so everybody played with the group. You know what I mean? So it was kind of an honor just to be asked to play a couple of gigs with them. But one day he says, "Man, you're the new," he didn't even ask me, he just told me. It's like, "So man, you're the new Boog guitar player." I was like, "What the," so like that really like struck me. But I also like kind of blanked out, like I was driving and I kind of had no reaction because I was so floored. And he was like, "Are you happy about this?" And I had to like pull over and be like, "Dude, that's like incredible news. Thank you." And like I just I was so happy to be in that band. So and that was like literally right before moving to Vancouver. So like I had to also be like, "God damn it." And now I'm moving to Vancouver. That said, that was one of the reasons I would come back to New York. So I put a really strong effort into coming back to New York. Anytime he had a gig, I was like, "You're just going to tell me like I live here and I'm going to figure out how to make my way back." So, so I was in the Boog for about 3 years. With Tim around, and thankfully we recorded the latest album that came out, which unfortunately is exactly falls in the category of like, it hasn't been, no publicist was ever hired for that. A label in New York called Story Sound has put it out, and it's out there. You can go on Spotify or iTunes or whatever, you can listen to it. It's great. It's a double album. I think it really represents like that band. Tim was really happy with the last configuration of the band, which is myself, Chris Cheek, Andrew Sherman, Tony Mason on drums, and Tim, of course, on bass, Leah Siegel, this guy Moses Petru on percussion and vocals, and that was kind of the Boog, and Tim was really happy with it. We recorded the last gig at this bar called Sonny's, which is the same bar that Smokey plays at every Wednesday, and that was kind of like the new Boog hang. And it's great. I think it's a great CD, and I think I wish more people could hear it. I mean, they can hear it. Everybody can hear it. It's free. It's on Spotify. But it's, it hasn't been advertised really. So it's just kind of out there. And
it's called the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. Is there a name?
The title is The Boog at Sonny's.
The Boog at Sonny's.
Yeah. So I'd be happy to, put that out there in this interview, and it's on Story Sound Records. So if you go on that website, there's links to whether you want to, support it through Amazon or iTunes, or if you just want to stream it. Of course, that's out there too.
Awesome.
And that's another record along with the Jim record, which this morning, which was the year before that. Those are 2 records I'm quite proud of in the last couple of years.
Hey, let's talk about like gear for a few minutes.
Let's talk about gear.
What's your like go-to? Is it your telly usually?
Yeah, I know that folks are only listening, but I thought I'd prepare my
he's got everything like
slots on my wall,
hanging up right on his brick wall, which is a really cool wall, especially for New York. He's got his telly, an acoustic, an Epiphone, and a bass. It looks like
the P bass I saved just because you wanted a story about an instrument, maybe a funny instrument acquisition story. But yeah, my go-to, at some point, I guess in progressing through my musical career, I've sort of realized also just pinpointing down, trying to have a style also sometimes depends on what if I just pick a guitar, you know what I mean? That might help me. Not to say that I think I'm at a point where I can probably play most guitars and kind of sound like myself.
I wouldn't worry about that.
Give me a treble pickup and I'll find some twang in there. But certainly at some point I made a decision to play Telly. It was like the instrument, and I'm a huge Danny Gatton fan, and Danny Gatton was such a big influence just because I can relate to him in the sense that like he had so many styles he liked, and that always appealed to me. And also the fact that it was kind of hard. I have a hard time recommending a Danny Gatton album to people because it's like, if you're not a guitar freak, there's some cheese in there. There's some stylistic questionable stuff. It's like, I mean, honestly, I have like tons of his bootlegs. So, why did I get off on Danny Gatton? We're talking about gear here. Anyways, he was a big gearhead. But the point is, it led me to Telly. So that's my number one Telly there on the wall. It wasn't my first Telly. My first Telly was a G&L.
Oh, so you opted, you prefer?
Yeah. I think that, the G&Ls are great. I mean, like, I bought one at 48th Street Custom Shop. They used to be a big G&L dealer. But I didn't know much about Tellys, except that I tried one at Lainey Stern's house. I used to work for her record label. I used to work for Lainey. She's Mike Stern's wife.
Yeah.
A lovely person, guitar player, composer. But she had like a 50s Telly in her closet, which I remember. I played her Telly a couple of times, and that was cool to me too. And so and then I think I was Jim. Who else? Albert Lee, like all these guys. Like Telly. It was calling to me. So that was my first guitar. Then after that, I got I don't know if you ever heard of a company called Glendale. They make bridges. They make hardware for Telly. But the guy also made Tellys. And for some reason, I ended up buying one of his guitars. I never played one. And it was a great guitar. He makes these like pine guitars, pine Telecasters. And it had this giant, I read the description. It had this like giant neck, which I think I would have liked. And I did like it. It was a really nice neck, and it's a really light guitar. It's like 6 pounds or something. So that was my first like really nice boutique Telly, which I still have, and it's still a great guitar. And then at some point I was like, I'd like to make my own Telly. So I made this from through the guys called MJT. I don't know if you know those guys on eBay, Mark J.
I don't know them. I know. So that's okay. So that's a custom Telly through those guys.
Exactly, and it's an MJT Telly. They don't make anything. They do the finish, really, but you can order the neck and the body through. They have a body supplier. They have necks on hand, but I ended up ordering this neck through Music Craft in Jersey.
Okay,
and they make what's called a Blackguard neck, which is copies of. Have you heard of the Blackguard book by this guy Nachos Baño?
No.
It's a Telly porn. It's like this. It's a huge book. It's $100.
The Blackguard book. I have to write that down.
Blackguard book. It's only Tellys from 1950 to 54. And that's it. Like, it's totally limited to those years. And it's just really, it's like close-ups of like the cavity and like the pickup and all this stuff. It's like they have like 50 Tellys in there or something. I don't know. So my wife gave it to me as a gift one year, total like gear.
Very cool, man.
Geek thing to have. And so I read the description of one of these necks, and the guy was like, this is the biggest neck I ever played. I was like, cool, I'll go with that one. And this company in Jersey makes necks that are spec'd out. The guy took measurements of everything. And for an extra $100, you get the Blackguard neck, which you tell them which model, the serial number from that book, and they make a neck that's to the specs.
So what neck? What is that, a 50?
So this is supposedly a 53, because I knew that Danny played a 53.
Right.
He always called those baseball bats. And the description for this particular guitar was, it's the biggest neck I ever played. I was like, cool, I want that one. So I ordered it, and I got to say, it came out fantastic. They don't all come out great. I actually had bought a guitar through them before that they had already made. You just had to assemble it. They don't sell the guitar assembled. They just send you the neck and the parts. So that one that was kind of a clunker. So I sold that one. But then this one I custom spec'd, and I used all the same hardware that came with the Glendale. So it's got the Glendale bridge. It's got the same pickups that came with that Glendale, which I really liked. This guy called Jerry Amalfitano, who's a Bensonhurst guy, but lives in Texas now. But he's got a bit of a reputation. I think Joe Perry plays his stuff. Anyways, whatever. There's a million boutique guys out there, and I think Jerry's great. He's a real personable guy. Anyways, so that's that guitar.
Is all that relicking, was that done, or have you done that?
That's all me. I mean, I actually asked, that company MJT, they do really great relic work, but all I asked them to do was take the finish off the back and the front.
Yeah.
And I wanted it natural. I wanted it not like the usual Blackguard color. I just wanted a see-through, which from everything I found, I mean, honestly, it's a copy of Danny's 53. I just kind of like the look of that guitar.
Great.
The front of his is gone. The back of his neck is gone. The finish. And it's a natural color, which maybe it's just because it got stripped down or something at some point. And it actually kind of became a popular color. Those guys at MJT started selling that color after I got that guitar. It was a new color option, which is simply no color.
The Luca model.
Clear. Yeah. I was like, hey, I want 10 cents for every guitar. But it came out really nice, and it's but the gunk on it is definitely mine. I've played it a lot.
That's very cool.
It's a nice guitar.
So that's your number one, the MJT 53 Telly. What's number two?
I put the Martin D18 next to it because I love that guitar, and it was kind of a special guitar. It was when I was getting into bluegrass. I had a nice time buying it. I went to Mandolin Brothers in Staten Island, which was a pretty famous place that unfortunately closed down. I think their rent went up or something. Or I think Stan passed away is what it is. He was the owner. But I went there with my wife, and
Stan Mandolin.
Stan Mandolin.
Was
that his last name?
No, I don't know. I'm asking. It's Mandolin Brothers.
Mandolin Brothers. But it was a great store. It was one of those stores you go in and you sit down, you get your own little room. The guy knew I was serious because I put a deposit down on a Collins guitar.
Okay.
So I showed up with a guitar on hold, and before he's like, I'll go get that guitar for you. And he's like, while you wait, why don't you try this guitar? Which was which was $1,500 more than I wanted to spend. And that's it. All day, he was passing guitars to me back and forth, and this is the first guitar he put in my hand. That dude knew, and it was special. There was another one of these in the store too, and nothing was no good, but this one was just sounds like a piano. And
isn't that funny that you could have two guitars and one of them feels like your next wife, and the other one feels like it's going to make you sick.
Yeah. And so that's the thing about going somewhere and playing something. It's worth not getting the deal sometimes on eBay, or whatever it is, sight unseen.
Yeah.
You got to go play it and actually, pay the full amount and the tax and all that things. Cause, and I went with my wife, and that was a nice time. She also lent me the money at the time.
Is she a musician?
She's not. No, she's not at all a musician in the sense that she doesn't do it for a living, but she has a great ear. She has photographic memory of lyrics, whatever you would call that. She can hear a song once and sing it back to you. I can listen to it 200 times and still not know it. I have to really put an effort into it. So I've always been attracted to the instrumental side of music. You could be talking about, the worst thing, hey, this is a song about wife abuse. I won't notice. I'll just be like, it's a really cool riff, so unfortunately it's a bit of a downside maybe for me. I'm capable, I do some singing, so I'm capable of learning lyrics, but it's definitely, she has a really good ear. She plays some French horn and some trombone, and she's good at it, when she wants to play it. She's her teacher was always like, man, you're a natural. So I say she's a musician only because and she also, she likes what I do. And I have to say that's a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
She comes to a lot of my gigs and she's a fan, and that's a wonderful thing.
That's really important, man. That you got to support for a long-term marriage, man. If you're not supporting each other, whatever the hell it is, it's going to be difficult to stick together, man.
So anyway, that guitar has, it sounds great. And to be more specific, it's a D18 authentic, which is that crazy authentic. When Martin says authentic, they went the extra step and used the hide glue, and they used it's a replica of a 1937 pre-war D18. It's about as high end a D18 as you can get, and it's it was pretty pricey, but it just sounded fantastic. I don't think I'll ever get rid of it.
Good.
I got to try a 1937 D18 that was $30,000 at Retrofret, and yes, it was an incredible instrument, and it has that sort of woodiness and looseness that you get from an old guitar. But I can't say that I go back to this one and I regret not having this.
You don't regret spending the extra, at $33,000 or $5,000.
Oddly enough, the only thing I think about that buying this guitar is like, for whatever reason, I was not looking at vintage acoustics at all, just because I didn't know anything about them. I didn't want to risk getting an old one, But I'm sure with the money I spent on this, I could have also gotten a really nice vintage one too. And vintage ones have their own appeal. But I love this guitar.
Yeah, man, you can't think about what you could have gotten, Especially if you're enjoying this, it's hard to think about what else you could have done.
It's every time I pick it up, it makes me want to play the best I can. What more can I ask for?
No, nothing, man. That's great.
Then the one next to that is this 1968 Epiphone Sheridan in walnut, which I've never seen another one yet in that color. There's tons of 335s in walnut, and 1968 means it was actually a Gibson guitar. It's when Sheridan got bought out, and it's just I don't know.
Is there a baritone on there?
No.
What's that? What's that? Oh, that's your jack.
It's just a jack. Yeah.
That's a jack. I saw some. Yeah. Right.
The other thing that's different, it's much fancier than any 335 at the time. The headstock's really beautiful. Like any high-end Epiphone, it has that really nice inlay at the top.
Yeah, it's really pretty guitar, man.
And I'll grab it.
Yeah, thank you. I want to see that. Yeah, that is pretty, man. So he's showing me the headstock. It's got a really nice foil.
I love gold hardware, but I got to say, here it does really, and it's also because it's worn out. But let me see the bottom of that.
The look. Yeah. Okay. That's what is that? Oh, okay. What is it? Looks like it's the F hole.
Oh,
I was seeing something there. I'm like, what the hell is that? Okay. It was just the F hole. That's a pretty guitar, man.
I think it's called a frequenator or frequencator or something like that. The bridge, the Epiphone style, like this was unique to Epiphone. Instead of having the tailpiece that all the strings start from the same place, the the E, A, and D strings start further back.
Do you know a guy named Red Volkart?
Oh, sure.
So Red is a really smart guy when it comes to collecting guitars, and he's bought and sold.
I listened to his interview on this year. He knows so much.
He's a great guy, but he said to me, and I don't know if he said it on the interview or not, but I think he did, but he said, you're always far better off picking up an old Epiphone from the 60s as opposed to spending any kind of money on a vintage 335. He said they're he goes, they're just as good. I'm not going to say they're better. They're equally good, but you'll spend $3 or $4 grand on that versus, 16 to 20 on a Gibson.
Oh yeah, easily. I mean, again, this is 68. So this brings the value down simply because it has the 1 and 11/16, not 11/16, 9/16.
Is that, and that's PAFs, or is that, no, that looks like,
those are mini humbugs.
Yeah. Mini humbugs. Okay.
But it's got the skinny neck at the top. So, that's a little bit, it takes some getting used to. So,
whatever you like, man.
That's literally the only reason that they're like $5 grand cheaper. That guitar from 1962 is way more expensive. It's like 10 grand.
Pretty guitar though, man. I love that inlay.
Really nice. And I got that because I was going through my whole Leon Rhodes troubadour phase, and I got really into getting a Sheridan. So I hunted that one down and got it for a pretty good deal.
Where'd you get that?
I got it off of Gbase. So I forget the dealer.
What is that?
Gbase.com.
Never heard of that.
Oh,
what am I missing here? Is that like reverb just for guitars?
Yes, pretty much. It's the earlier reverb. But you have to be a store or a dealer, like a home. You can be a home dealer, but I think you can't just be like somebody who has like one guitar you want to sell off. Like I've never tried because I don't do it. I don't sell stuff off G-Base, but I think you have to somehow get approved to sell on there. Like pretty much any store is on there, but then you also get guys that are now on Reverb and eBay as well. But I think they were maybe also, that was kind of a good place to go for a long time. They're still up and running, and it's a cool site. You find a lot of stuff still that you don't find on Reverb and whatnot.
So were they nearby? Did you go check that out, or was that just on?
No, it was sight unseen. I talked to the guy and he sent it to me, and all those guys, it's kind of a place for reputable dealers. So pretty much anybody there will give you at least a 3-day.
Yeah. So if it's not a fit, you just ship it back.
Yeah. That's kind of their thing. Like G-Base is kind of like, you have to give people some leeway. It's not just, oops, sorry.
Yeah.
You got it done. So it's mostly like stores and like Retro Fret's on there, like all these like stores.
Sure.
Mandolin Brothers used to be on there and whatnot. So.
And the bass, why do you have the bass up there, man?
I have the bass because it's a parts bass, but my father-in-law was waiting for a cab outside once to go back to the airport, and he's like, "Hey, Luca, there's a stoop sale going on here," and I was like, "Really?" So I step out, and I just see like literally like 2 buildings over from me. There's a classic guitar, a bass, and then a bunch of other stuff, not non-music stuff. And already from far, I was like, "That just looks like an old Fender neck." And I go over, and sure enough, I'm like, "What is that?" She's like, "Oh, it's this woman." And it was a guitar player, and she's like, "Oh yeah, it's like a 70s neck, but the body was made, at 48th Street Custom." Like she knew all about it, I was like, "Oh shit, well, how much is that?" She's like, "Oh, it's $250." I was like, "I'll give you 2." And she's like, "Okay." And like literally his dad was like, his like 6-year-old was like eyeing the bass for his little kid. I was like, "No way, get out of here, kid. You're not getting a 70s P bass, like from the thing." But anyways, it's actually a jazz neck. It's a jazz bass with a 48th Street Custom Guitars was the original ESP custom shop in New York.
Oh, I didn't know that.
The original store that like Japanese luthiers, and they would make copies. If you wanted a copy of a Strat body, like if you want to get like a cool guitar, like get an 80s ESP, they're basically like, almost lawsuit Strats, you know what I mean? Because they would make replicas. Now everybody's making licensed Fender parts, but at the time that's what you would do. So somebody put a P-bass body. I don't know. I have no idea other than that, but it's like, the neck alone's like $800, So
yeah.
That's my one like super bargain deal story. I don't know how much I'd sell it for, honestly. I don't know. I never want to sell it. It's got a ridiculously small neck. It's super easy to play.
Do you play a lot of bass?
Not professionally. I did actually for a year, oddly enough, in a Cuban band, just because a friend asked me to on a whim to come down one night because they couldn't find a single bass player to play. And
in New York City?
Yeah. I literally refused. I was like, "Dude, no way. I'm not going to disrespect that whole musical tradition." And he's like, "Dude, it's so laid back. Just come down. We need a bass player." And I went down, and somehow the singer liked me, who was Cuban. And, and I bought a bass, and I played in a Cuban band for a year. And, it was fun while it lasted. They played. It was actually really it really helped me out at the time because the dude gigged like crazy. I was doing all these, $50 to $70 gigs, but I was playing like 4 or 5 nights a week. I was playing more bass than I was guitar at the time, so
that's funny.
So I did play bass for a while, but now I only play it for recordings, just at home and whatnot. So, if you want to talk about the other 17 or 18 guitars I mounted.
No, man. Holy shit. Why you have that many guitars? This is a lot of guitars.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm more of an amp geek than I am a guitar geek. I care more about amps than guitars. But
what's your number one?
Right now it's a Brown Deluxe, a 60s Fender Deluxe, just because it's like, portable, loud enough.
Yeah.
And I just think it sounds great.
Did Jim get you into those? Because I think that's what he plays, isn't it?
No, he plays a Princeton Reverb.
Okay.
His amps have to have reverb.
Oh, he's a big reverb guy.
Mine not necessarily. I kind of get spooked by too. I love reverb at home, and then I play on the. I like the immediacy of sound. I just like a real. It's. I don't know. Like a lot of the stuff I like is 50s and 60s, like free reverb. If there's reverb, it was plate reverb that was added after in the studio. Where there's a certain directness to not reverb. So usually, I mean, if the room sounds good, I might have a reverb pedal, but I just don't even like dial it in, but yeah, I like that Brown Deluxe before, Fender Harvard's another one that I love. That's a Steve Cropper amp. It's a little 10-inch speaker amp. It's almost loud enough for most.
So it's like a 2 or 3 watts or something?
12.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice amp. And
what would you say the best? That's such a subjective question, but what's your favorite amp?
I love the Vibro. I have a Vibrolux reverb, like a 67.
Oh, you got a lot of old Fenders.
I almost only have old Fenders, mostly because I learned how to fix them up. I got tired of New York techs.
Man, it's got to be expensive as shit to get anything.
It's expensive. There's a general lack because if you're any good at all, there's a huge customer base. And then I just think, that kind of stuff takes time. That I think immediately you will have a backlog of amps to be fixed, and you simply can't put in the time that it takes sometimes to troubleshoot things.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually like a bad place to be for amp tech because you got a lot of business, but I think it's probably really easy to get bad mouths just because like you probably won't be able to get it back in time for certain people.
Yeah.
So it's a funny,
it's a tough business in general. I know a lot of guys.
It's a tough business in general. But like, for example, going out to Vancouver, I met a couple of guys and they were great amp techs, but it's such a slower scene there that, you can.
People don't get that about New York, like, the patience thing.
That's a question?
No, I'm just saying people don't get that. The lack of patience thing. It's a very.
Well, it's like driving here, right? You get your New York minute, right? You're honking. The lights it's turning yellow on the other sign. The guy's looking at the other side so that he knows when to honk it.
Yeah.
But so that so I learned to fix amps. I got really into it, but it was kind of a tone quest too. I went from literally playing solid state like polytones in my jazz days. And then I got real nerdy about tone and just kind of had a sort of a new renaissance of like, man, I've realized, and it's a big part of me. Like I realized that like I'm really influenced on a certain gig by having bad tone. Like I can't just go, like if I just go into a backline amp with some pedals, like I'm usually pretty miserable, and like I don't think I play my best. I go back and listen to a recording and I probably, to most people and even to myself, have sounded the same as I always do, but in the moment I often just feel.
You record every performance you have?
No, but I do try and record it, and especially now with like a phone, which records totally fine, for the most part.
So you just set up your phone. You don't even give a shit about video. You just set up the phone and just hit record.
I have a camera. I wish I used it. I have a camera.
What the hell was that? It sounded like a fucking Star Trek phaser.
Really?
I thought somebody was getting beamed in here any second, man.
That's funny. It was just my phone, and the ringer is actually set to like an old school.
Yeah, it sounded like a.
So, but yeah, tone's been like kind of really important to me. It's kind of paid off. I mean, like it's honestly a compliment I get. I just say that out of like, with total humility, but I do appreciate when somebody mentions it, only because like I put the work into it. Actually, I haven't just
plug shit.
I'm not cool with any.
Plug any stuff in.
My whole shtick on like, I think music is suffering because of the quality of the shit that's out there right now. And the fact that you can't walk into a store and play a beginner Fender amp in the 50s and immediately have good tone. That's something that people in the 50s and 60s didn't know that they were getting for free. You just didn't, I'm sure they appreciated that, but I do think like it was much easier to get inspired because the shitty guitar that you bought in the 50s and 60s are now guitars that everybody is seeking after.
Yeah.
You know, and there's something to be said about that. You know, a guitar, Silvertone into a Fender Champ. I mean, that was budget, and that sounds fantastic. You know, you just want to play the guitar more. You come back with and I think they were probably hopefully set up a little bit better at the time. But, you know, you come back from guitar. So, I mean, I have a student story. Like, his mom, this kid, he was kind of promising and he could play a little bit. And his mom was like, what amp should I buy him? And I was like, well, you know, get him a Blues Junior. It's a new amp. It's cheap. Like, his grandparents wanted to give him, you know, buy him an amp.
A Dumble.
It's like, yeah, you can't say that. Also, he won't appreciate it. You know? But I was like, you know, get a Blues Junior. It's like a tube amp. And also, if he ever like starts playing in a band that's loud enough for a drummer, you know, it's fine. Like, you can find them anywhere, $200-$300. That's because she told me the budget. You know, maybe they're more. I don't remember what they cost, but it was within the budget that they had. The kid comes back, and the store sold him like a digital amp. You know, like a digital Fender.
Yeah.
And he was like, man, it's got a Marshall setting and it's got this. And I was like, yeah, you're going to like that for a week and then you're going to be down on yourself, you know? And sure enough, like, I don't know, it didn't lead to anything. Who's to say it would have? But at the same time, there's, you know, I do think there's a bit of a tone crisis going on. And, you know, and there's a lot of misleading information on YouTube and, you know, forums and whatnot. And you know, sometimes you get deep into a forum and there's this whole discussion and this guy who's been chiming in for the last 7 pages about you know, finally uploads a clip of himself. And you're just like, really? I'm listening to you? You know, like, you know, so there's a little bit of that going on. It's so easy to obtain information, but at the same time, there's a lot, you know, there's all these words getting thrown out about vintage this, vintage that. So, you know, I definitely put a lot of time and investment into finding out, you know, including old speakers. Like, I want a non-recone speaker. I just want to know what it sounded like. Now I can upgrade, you know, now I know what it means when you say this thing sounds vintage, but first I need to hear what it sounded like. And it was a huge, step forward, I think, in me, also playing in projects that I was happier with and more bands that I was into, and also getting calls for more gigs because slowly, you know, I started getting in tune more with what I wanted to play and what was true to my heart, you know, and still to this day, like, what excites me, I mean, it'll be like, you know, Edgar Blanchard, a little known New Orleans guitar player, but he was the guy on like a million New Orleans records. He was like the Stax version of New Orleans, you know. I mean, all the stuff he did, it's great tone, you know, and it's all just the guitar through an amp. I mean, literally, you know, I could stop around 1973 and be happy for the rest of my life. And most of that music, minus fuzz pedals, was overdrive pedal free, was pedal free. You know, it was like guitar and an amp.
Yeah, period.
You know what I mean? You just crank the amp, and PAs weren't loud enough. Thankfully, that's actually a thing to be thankful, because they had to make big ass amps. You got to hear the sound of the amp on stage. You don't get to hear that anymore. You know, now you're supposed to make the sound guy happy. You know what I mean? Like, the PAs are so great now that the guy wants you to bring a vibro champ and then put it through your monitor. Terrible. You know, it's like, you know, you got to get used to it, and it's fine because that's the way things are now. But, like, you know, you show up at a backline gig and you're given a cold sounding Fender twin reverb. Like, it all has to come from your pedal board, you know, and I think that's all taken a toll on just music in general, you know, and I think tones are a little bit less inspiring now. And I think it's just hard. You have to put more work into finding it, you know. Thankfully, there's also the nice side of that, which is there's YouTube and there's all these great videos going up of what it used to, you know, what people used to use. And you're getting, you know, like Premier Guitar does that whole gear rundown.
Rig rundown. Yeah.
It's great. You know what I mean? But, you know, at the same time, you know, you still have to put some effort into it. So that's been a big part of me. And I think it's paid off in terms of, and it's something I would, you know, if I had, you know, when I have students, I do say that. So, you know, I was like, dude, get some tone, you know, like
get some tone.
get some tone, because like you don't want to just be playing through like overdrive pedals that are supposed to sound like this or that, or see what it sounds like to play through the amp cranked first.
Yeah.
And find a rehearsal space. I remember renting a rehearsal space just so I could crank a tube amp.
Oh,
when
really?
I got the first tube amp. Yeah, it was a worthwhile investment. I was like, oh, that's what it sounds like.
Where was this, like in Brazil or something?
No, it was here. I mean, I think I've had tube amps before, but when I was at Berklee, I had like a Roland jazz chorus. I might have had. For a while I had that huge like 410 Blues DeVille. But I never got to crank that.
Yeah. I need to do that more, man. I need to crank my amp more. Sure.
Well, you should get a aux. Have you heard of the aux box?
No. What is that?
It's this thing. It's that thing. Can you see it?
Yeah. What is that? Yeah. What is that? Yeah. What is that?
It's called an aux top amp box. It's made by Universal Audio. And it's pretty new to the market. It's about a year old, and it's basically an attenuator that works. Because I've tried some out. I've tried a bunch of different attenuators, and this actually works in the sense that, like, to me, an attenuator that works is something you can get a clean sound out of at low levels from a twin reverb. Basically, that's sitting on top of a dual Showman, actually. I can crank that dual Showman and play it through my headphones. It sounds exactly like
wow.
Which at whisper levels is usually that's the biggest compromise. Everything sounds distorted. I have a Weber attenuator. I try some other. I don't want to throw names out there, but anyways, the point is, like, until now, I think it really is a game changer. And,
aux talk amp box.
Yeah, another thing that it comes with a software that it emulates cabinets. It emulates cabinets recorded in a studio, so it has mic emulations and cabinet emulations. So basically, you play it and you select cabinet of your choice and mic of your choice up to 3. It has 2 room mics and 2 other mics that go in your amp. Man, it sounds like exactly like a nice studio, and you can really get. It's great. I can play all my amps. I can play them on, anytime. I can record. It's it's a professional recording tool, and Jim got one from Universal Audio. They sent it. They're trying to get them out to players, and I have one, and we want to record a duet album on this. Actually, we've reached out to Universal Audio to finance it. But we both have one, and I was like, man, I could just come over to your place and it's just a duet album. We just both use one, and but you can use it live too, because you have different levels of volume, just like an attenuator. I mean, I can't describe it unless you've tried other attenuators. It's kind of hard to know how well it works, but the fact is, you can, a clean dual Showman or twin reverb is still pretty loud. And
you get to crank it at low volumes, basically.
You get to crank it, but you also get the clean sound. That's important. Attenuators usually distort when you go to really low levels, like in the middle of the night. They still don't. You can't get the clean sound. You know what I mean? Everybody's gotten pretty good at getting a good distorted sound, but clean's good. So, anyways, it's a cool tool. Combined with some software technology and whatnot. But yeah, I definitely pretty psyched about it.
Desert Island Discs, man.
Geez, Desert Island Discs.
Top 3. No particular order, just for today.
Boss Guitar by Wes Montgomery was a big one for me. I can still, I sang all the solos on that one. I can listen to Wes anytime. Pure music there. I just think the guy would have sounded the way he did regardless of the instrument. One of those guys, I guess, just like his lines are melodic in a way that I have a hard time. It's like it's hard for me to grasp. It's just so musical the way he approaches the guitar. And that album was my first guitar teacher, jazz guitar teacher, turned me on to that album, and he said it was his favorite. I think for a good reason. It's got really good tone on there. I think he's playing through a twin reverb, somebody told me, or something like that. But it's just a really nice record. Probably definitely a Beatles record would keep me sane on an island. Either, damn. Does that count as, can I name 3 and that counts as 1 now?
No, you can just call it a box. Say the Beatles box set.
The Beatles box set, yeah. Yeah. I love Revolver, but then there's also Sgt. Pepper. And, like, I'm trying to think of how I would not go crazy on an island, like get some variety. Probably for peace of mind, there's a João Gilberto CD from 1973 that's self-titled João Gilberto, even though he already had a self-titled CD that came out in 61, which is probably just as good. But the one I have, is that really got to me. It's kind of a mesmerizing CD. It's just him, and it's just guitar and voice, and there's a dude playing percussion. There's nothing else on the record. And
from not the one from 1971, you said.
73.
Yeah,
there's one from 61 that's also called João Gilberto, but this one's from 73.
Dude, you say that so Brazilian, it was like I almost didn't know what you were saying at first.
Right.
That was very impressive.
Hey, man, I did learn some Portuguese. Actually, you had to take Portuguese in any international school till you went to Brazil. It was mandatory to take Portuguese.
In fact, here, how ignorant am I saying Brazilian? I meant Portuguese. It's so funny. It took me, I interviewed
they should change it to Brazil.
Yeah, well, it's just I interviewed
their colonialist roots. Anyways.
Yeah, it's a tough language. Hey, man, I'm going to ask you 3 more questions. I really appreciate all your time, Luca. I'm trying to be sensitive here. This is a tough question. What do you like most about yourself? Besides your Portuguese accent.
I guess I'll look at my, sort of malleability and flexibility as a positive. I mean, sometimes I guess at the beginning of the interview, I mentioned that a little bit. I mean, I think I'm, and that goes across in terms of also like depending on the situation, whether it's a non-musical situation, I'm pretty malleable. I can adapt to different situations and pretty fast. So I think that's a positive thing, and I'm pretty sociable person, quite sociable. Oddly enough, that doesn't translate to social media as much. And
well, that's a different.
Although I actually don't think it's odd at all, because the guy who created social media was a total antisocial person.
Yeah,
that's what I like. I mean, I like in-person dialogue. And,
yeah, that's a totally different.
I'm quite terrible at social media. I feel horrible every time I have to post anything. I'm just, it's just.
Yeah, I don't think you post a lot, do you?
No, it's a struggle for me, and I should, just because of the way things work, and because nowadays, if you want to get a gig, people look at your social media profile, and if you want to get a publicist or a promoter, then they want you to be on the phone all day, like tweeting stuff or whatever. So,
well, but plus your friends want to know what you're doing.
Oh no, I don't deny the benefits of it. I just feel a little myself. I can't. I have a hard time.
That's promotion. That's not being social. That's different.
That's promotion, exactly. But sometimes it gets, you have to be a social. You have to. I don't know. It's like even just like coming up with a clever thing to say. And trust me, man, I'm like, I think I say clever things sometimes. Like I think I have a sense of humor, and it comes out in person better than it does in writing. Maybe I have too much time to think about it when I write about it. That's what the problem is. But
I think most people probably would be in that.
Yeah. There's plenty of research to prove that like most people feel like shit after spending 30 minutes on Facebook.
Yeah. God, 30 minutes.
It's a fact. Yeah.
Oh my God. God, if I've never done that, I hope I never do that. 30 minutes on Facebook. God, that's a lot of time.
Easily. I think there's people who spend a lot of time, but even 5 minutes, I feel bad after a few minutes. I'm like, damn it. I want that gig. There's that, I think I'm a pretty generous person. I that's maybe one of the things I have to hold back sometimes. My mother's a very generous person, sometimes to a fault. Like she's so generous. Like sometimes she's like, well, I did this. Why didn't you do the repay? And I'm just like, well, you can't impose your generosity. You're so giving, Mom. You can't hold it against somebody that they're not like you, So like I have a little bit of that in me. I'm pretty generous. I give a lot of time and things for things. And I think I think it's a good quality, but sometimes I have to fight it because I'm like, hey, I have to be a little bit more selfish. Look after myself here.
You get to see your folks a lot? Do you go to Italy a lot?
Not a lot. I mean, it's once a year now.
Yeah.
Used to go twice a year. Now it's more like one, just because also got to visit the in-laws.
Sure. Where are they?
They're in California.
Oh, that's cool.
Just north of San Francisco.
That's great. At least you're going to some good places, man.
Yeah.
This is a fun question, man. What's your favorite New York City food?
I'm a sucker for noodles.
Oh, really?
Dude, I'm okay with like shitty lo mein. I actually have a song called Shitty Lo Mein. Just because, like, seriously, like me and stir fried noodles, like I will go pretty low in my standards.
You ever go to Noodle Town down in Chinatown?
Noodle Town.
Yeah, it's got it's like on Bayard Street, and it's got like a weird address, like 18 and a half or something like that.
Isn't Noodle Town the one that's right at the entrance of the Manhattan Bridge?
Yes, it's real close to that, I think. And it's on the corner, I'm pretty sure, of a street.
Something like that. Yeah, I think it's the same place. Yeah, that place like open real late.
Yes.
It's a New York institution.
Yeah.
I've only actually eaten in there once, and that was the last time I went. And I prefer the takeout to actually eating there, partially because I've also stopped eating meat a few years ago, and there was an overwhelming smell of something like steamed pork or something coming from, like, it ventilates into the restaurant. It's like that place is such a trip. It's like, I don't know how they even have like they do like grades in New York, like ABC, like I don't even know how that place has any grade whatsoever, but
it's Chinatown, man. They're all like that.
It's there. Chinatown. You get
they get a separate set of rules,
but their lo mein's good when you get it to go.
That's funny.
So anyways, like I guess like I love the variety of stir fried. There's I got a Vietnamese place on my block. I love the glass noodles. I like the Thai noodles, all that stuff. So
do you think is that because you grew up probably eating a lot of pasta?
Definitely.
Yeah. So
I ate pasta like 5 nights a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's like, in Latin families, it's rice.
Yes.
Yeah. That's cool, man. Very cool. Yeah. I went there with my sons, both my sons, one time. I went to the city. They feasted. I was so happy to just sit them eat.
You should definitely go. I don't mean
farm animals,
for some reason, the last time I went, I ended up diagnosing myself with an olfactory condition. In the sense that, dude, I'm serious. I smelled that pork for 3 days in my nose. I couldn't get rid of it. That was my last experience at Noodle Town. And I said,
oh my God.
I was like, man, I don't know if I can go eat there again. I have to go. I have got to run in and out with some noodles. I'll get it to go, but partially it's because I also don't eat meat anymore, so I'm much more sensitive to that. So
that's the spot where, like, you're sloppy drunk and it's like 2:30 in the morning.
That's right.
And you got to get some grease.
I'm thankful it exists.
Yeah.
And I want to be there forever because that's the great thing about New York. The bars close at 4.
Yeah.
You can be able to stay after hours if the bartenders like you.
And you can go get some food.
And then you can go get some 6 a.m., Chinese food if you want it.
Or pizza.
It's all there.
Hey, last question, Luca. What has been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years? And how much of this change has been deliberate and how much is just a part of aging?
I think I've I don't know if my personality has changed. I think it's just tuning in more into what I care about and what person I want to be. And I think my wife has helped me get there, and the musicians that I hang out with. And, I'm so lucky to be playing with all kinds of, basically like my favorite, people. I'm just lucky. I'm getting to play with them here in New York. And I take away a lot from, I'm learning a lot about just listening. I'm talking about whether we're having a conversation or whether we're playing music. Being more accepting less judgmental, I guess. Italians are very judgmental. I could go into a whole other hour about that. It's something I struggle with when I go back to Italy. It's just funny, like with my family, it's just like judgment comes out so fast. You know what I mean? About anything.
I think that's a lot. I think families in general tend to be like that. Like I look at my kids and they're really good kids, but I get the worst of them. And you know what I mean? And not because they're being mean, but because it's their family. They, you can be rough around the edges.
Right.
No one's going to like bust their balls or anything. You accept them for whatever.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's just being also in New York, the kind of people, the diversity and just learning about acceptance. That's, that's another thing you got to put work into. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like, you have to love it and you have to just be accepting of other people in this town. And, I play with just so many people that I play with are just like great minds. They're interesting.
Yeah.
Their play is interesting. So they have interesting things to say. And I think I've just come to like be a better listener. Or I'm trying to be a better listener and be even more open-minded. Although that is the reason I, came to New York. And I also do think with my childhood, I was sort of.
Yeah, I got to think you're inherently pretty open-minded, man.
Yeah. Yeah. But, it's just, and in these times, I think it's even more important to become, more open-minded and accepting. And it's only emphasizing how important all that is, yeah, I don't know if it's a personality change, but maybe it is, but I guess just trying to be and also maybe being a little bit more selfish in a good way, like just thinking a little bit more about myself.
Taking care of you, man. You got to taking
care of myself, trying to move my music forward. It's not been a linear path and I'm still, just things are just evolving, like you said, you went to look me up on YouTube and there's just so many different facets of what I've done. And I mean, I love that that's part of me, but it's also, it's been a windy path, but I think I'm like narrowing down, honing in on certain things. And I'm in a very happy place, just everybody I'm playing with, I'm very happy with. I've found a way to, make it work for me financially, that I can be selective about what I play. And I think that's very important, like find something that doesn't make you grumpy. Super important. Yeah. I saw a lot of grumpy people growing up in this industry. I play with a lot of people that were getting disgruntled in the jazz scene. That pulled me a little bit away. Jazz definitely, of a lot of the styles, pulls that out of you. It's a very, very difficult art and style. And I think there's a lot of disgruntled people, more so than other fields. And I didn't want to be that person. Like I could constantly see like running into people's like, man, I really don't want to be doing that. Or I don't want to be that cranky. You know what I mean? So I got to find what makes me happy and find people that are happy at what they're doing. And I think to me, I'm succeeding, at surrounding myself with that. And I'm just trying to always do that more and more. And it's contagious, and even you noting that I like seem happy and smiling in the videos makes me happy that it's. Yeah, for sure. That you picked up on that, cause I wouldn't have, it's not something I've noticed so much, if I look at myself. So that's,
well, cool, man. Where can people, do you post either on your website or on social media, what gigs you got? What gigs you have going on?
Yes. Well, my website's probably the best place. I always try and gigs that I care about, I also put on my social media. But my website, lucabenedetti.com. Even if you misspell that, I think Google will fix it for you.
I'll spell it. It's Luca. Luca Benedetti is Benedetti. Man, I had a .com. I had a school teacher named Mrs. Benedetti about 100 years ago. It's quite funny. Right. Yeah.
So the gigs calendar on there is updated. Is always updated because it's linked up to my own like Google Calendar.
Oh,
so
cool.
It's like, it's whatever I put in for myself. Like if it's not on the website, then I'm probably going to forget the gig. So I have to be updated. It's not a separate process. So, and I post things that I would like people to know about on there. So if it's on my website, it's something I'd be happy for people to hear about me.
Are you on like Instagram?
I'm definitely on Instagram.
Okay. What is it? Is it just Luca Benedetti, or what is? Do you know what it is?
I will tell you in 2 seconds because I gotta look myself up. It's Luca Benedetti _GTR.
Okay.
And yeah, I usually post on Instagram and then share it to Facebook just because I don't know why.
Because it's easy. Because you
direct.
just push a button. You just push a button, it automatically shares. That's
well, and if I post about a gig tonight, people on Facebook won't see it. Like the algorithm, like it doesn't show up right away. So Instagram is actually faster at putting it up. So, but yeah, absolutely. And then if you want to hear whatever records I've
check out especially Luca's records, Honeyfingers, which he did that with Jim Campilongo and a couple other cool guys in town, another guitar player and a pedal steel player, and also the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout, which is the name of the album is called The Boog at Sonny's.
Yep.
And that's another record.
I have a CD of my own that I put out in 2010. I will be recording again at the end of this year, finally. Called Luca Benedetti's Thermionics. That was the name of the band, which was so that's a CD. It's called Tada. That's also out there. You can stream that. It's on my website. You can find that out. I'm really happy with that record. It was a turning point for me. It's when I transitioned from sort of playing more straight ahead stuff to just sort of having an aversion to sounding like that and kind of really getting more into tones and roots music, and it has a kind of a hard. It's kind of rocks, it's like I call it rock jazz instead of jazz rock because I put an emphasis on the rock. But it came out really nice. People still sometimes find out about it and say nice things about it. It's got Erik Deutsch on there on keyboards. He played with Charlie Hunter.
Charlie's great, man.
Yeah, there's like 2 records he's on with Charlie, Baboon Strength and Mystico, which are great Charlie records. That's with my boy Tony Mason on drums too, who's in the Brooklyn Boogaloo Blowout. It's got this guy Jeff Hanley and my friend Dave Burnett on drums. It's a nice record. I'm still proud of that one. So, but that's it's years old at this point. It's time for that.
That's all right. Check it out online. It's called Tada by Luca, and it's on his website and all the links to it. And also, I was surprised Luca's available for lessons. So if you're interested in connecting with him, just hit him up on his web. I guess the contact form of your website. Yeah,
that just sends me an email to my Gmail. But if you want to Gmail me directly, it's just lucanyc@gmail. So that's LUCANYC like New York City @gmail.com. So that's you can also just hit me up there. You can message me on Facebook, and I'd be happy to give a lesson. So I've been teaching for a long time. So.
And that is officially more marketing than Luca Benedetti's done in perhaps his entire music career, all in one afternoon here. So I am very happy. I am very happy.
Thanks to you.
Man, no, thank you. I really appreciate your time, man. I thank you for sharing all your stories about your growing up and all that cool stuff. And when you come out with your record, come back on again and we'll promote it and we'll talk about it.
I appreciate that. If I could, before you, just because you leave, because there's one more record.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I made out in Vancouver, which again is one of those records that didn't get publicity, but I'm happy with it. I just wanted to give a shout out to my friends out in Vancouver. But I had a band called Speeding West out there, which was a take on the name Speedy
West.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, and also I was out west, and we played some of the similar Honeyfingers thing. But I got together with a great guitar player, Scott Smith, who's out there. And also Paul Pigat is on that record. I don't know if you know him, but he's a well-known guy out there. You should definitely check both those guys out.
And where is that on?
Speeding West is on CD Baby, but it's on Google Play. It's on Spotify. And that features me and Scott Smith, and then it's got bass and drums. And Scott also plays some steel. But that's a nice record. It came out real nice too. It's kind of a goodbye present for me from Vancouver.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and a shout out to my friend Corey Hawthorne, who I know will probably listen to this interview because he's the first guy I met out in Vancouver, and I think he recommended before Jim. He said he listens to your podcast a lot. And,
that's really cool. I'm starting to hear that, like people crawling out of the woodwork.
Yeah,
like,
he was happy to know I was going to be on here. He's like, "Hey man, I put your name out to Craig to interview you." So I don't know if he came before or after Jim.
No, I never heard.
But if he got this far in the interview, congratulations, Corey.
Yeah, Corey, thank you, man. Thanks for listening.
Another great guitar player out in somewhere.
Awesome, man.
So, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, and everybody check out Luca online. He's a great player, and he's just a really mellow guy, and he's having fun playing, and he's a really excellent player. It's Luca Benedetti, Benedetti, and thank you again, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Thanks again to Luca Benedetti for spending time with us. Please check him out online and support his music. If you think you want to get some lessons, hit him up. He's been teaching a really long time, and he's a smart dude. And go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up for our newsletter right now. It's just get on our list. And remember, most important, happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice. Go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, and I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.